My favorite black metal band changes all the time. Yesterday it was Bathory, then the day after that it was Nocturnal Mortem, and now today it's Inquisition. And of the three bands I just named, Inquisition is widely regarded to be the most consistent and the bestest of the three. And even though they've had several members when they first started, hilariously this band has only been 2 members, even live. You have Dagon on vocals and guitar and Incubus on drums. Shit, they don't even tour with a bass player. They have their instruments tuned in a way where it sounds so heavy and so insane that it sounds like multiple people when it's still only just 2. But the greatest black metal band ever didn't actually start as a black metal band. In fact, before we even get to the first album, we have to turn our demo debut dumbass glasses on and go back to the very beginning of this band. Back to the thrash metal demos. The first notable demo from this band is Anxious Death, which had 2 really kick-ass songs on it, Anxious Death and Low Superiority, which was showing off the band had a very, very keen progressive edge. But the most important demo of the 2 would actually be Forever Under, which actually ended up to be about studio album length, so I don't know why they didn't just release this as an album. And if it was released as an album, this would be like one of the greatest thrash albums ever. The riffs on this are insane. And for demo quality, the musicianship on this is fan-freaking-tastic. And just like the other demo, this one shows off a lot of progressive tendencies of this band. There's several riffs. This band does not like to be birdsome, or should I say birdsome? And my favorite song in this whole thing is actually probably one of the shorter songs, but it's so punchy and it's so rhythmically catchy. We're talking about Abstract Confusion. But as great as that demo is, it sounds very, very different compared to the real material from Inquisition. But it is still a great beginning and still definitely worth checking out. But the band would have to go through a radical change to become what I consider to be the greatest black metal band ever. And the next album, that turned out to be a complete landmark for their career and for black metal, had several key changes that not only made them black metal, but made them unique to black metal. Let's talk about it. Now, the big changes and most notable trends that this album started, first of all, the most important trend is that it's black metal. Second of all, they actually had a melodic edge to it, which made it unique. On every album from this point onwards, it's not only black metal, but they have melodic tendencies here and there, or even doomy tendencies, but it's not melodic in a melodic death metal way where it's really intrusive. It actually is almost unnoticeable unless you're really paying attention. So it makes the riffs and music very easy to get into. They actually start a trend that makes the band kind of hard to get into, and that is the frog vocals. Now, the frog vocals actually start to disappear as their discography moves onward, and Dagon kind of just does a black metal vocal that you hear on from other bands. But of course, it still has that frog tinge to it. But on these early albums, it just sounds like, and a lot of people don't like that. But it's an acquired taste. Give it time. Start with maybe the later albums and then move backwards, because it is one of the most unique and best black metal vocal styles ever. Another trend this album started was, of course, the themes. This band likes to focus a lot on occultism and space. And with pretentious topics come pretentious names. Song titles are way too long, really weirdly worded. Lyrics are extremely smart. And the album titles are incredibly pretentious. I mean, come on. Into the infernal regions of the ancient cult. And the album titles just keep getting longer and longer, the newest one being the longest, most ridiculous title they've ever had. And the final trend that they set with this album is the artworks. Now, usually with Inquisition, I prefer the original artworks that they released for each album, and I think that the re-released remixes that they did, the album covers for those look like complete shit. But this album is the only exception for me. I actually don't even like the original version of the artwork, and I don't even like the remastered version of the artwork. There's this very rare, weird version of the artwork, which I absolutely love, and it's this version. That, to me, is the artwork for this album. It actually looks a lot more like the albums that come after in that artwork style of the old days. Even though I said maybe start later down the road if you want to get rid of the frog vocals, but if it doesn't bother you, start here. This is a great place to start. It's a very catchy album, even though it is one of my lesser favorites for a song or two in there that are kind of not as strong. The rest of the material, if it was just that, this would easily be their best album. I mean, come on. There's a song on here that's so damn good I made it the intro for Winter Mayhem 2. The epic, badass song summoned by ancient wizards under a black moon. The riffs are insane on that. The song diversity is fantastic. You have doomy moments, epic moments. You have even some weird, like, Celtic vibes on the initiation. My biggest problem with this album, though, is the way it ends. It ends with a song that just has guitar and vocals, and it just sounds kind of boring. It drags on for a while, but it's not bad, and it is kind of melodic and catchy. It just feels a little boring without drums. But the best song, a song that should have ended the album, and it would have been maybe my favorite album from them, Solitary Death in the Nocturnal Woodlands, is epic, doomy as fuck, and super catchy and easy to get into. But even though this album had a few minor glitches, they would perfect this style on the next album. Another one with a pretentious title and a badass artwork. This album is not only their best album in my opinion, and I will explain to all you detractors that say no it's not, exactly why, but the artwork, everything, it's like one of the greatest black metal albums ever. Invoking the Majestic Throne of Satan, once again, really pretentious album titles, is song for song for song for song fantastic. Every song different. Every song extremely catchy, extremely memorable. Some of the best riffs and best songs they've ever written. The first two songs are kind of similar. You have, start with really fast riffage and then, badass chugs in the middle. Some doomy parts and then gets back into the speed, and then you have Kill with Hate, which is just intense all the way through, and then you have slower moments, Rituals of Human Sacrifice for the Lord Baal, really catchy, really slow. Invoking the Majestic Throne of Satan, incredibly catchy. Hail the King of All Heathens has a very old-timey folk vibe to it, which I really like. But then we get to the best songs in the album. Now it ends with a song that's almost sort of an epic, but it kind of goes silent and then like weird noises at the end, but it's still a badass song that's very unorthodox. Probably the weirdest song on the album. Imperial Hymn for Our Master Satan is awesome, but right before that is the two best songs in the album. The Realm of Shadow Shall Forever Reign is a fast, blistering song on the album, but is the most catchy, memorable shit. I mean, it is so catchy that they could have had a music video for this shit. It is fantastic. For Lucifer, My Blood is probably their best doomy song ever. It is fantastic. Now, I've always had a soft spot for the third album, Magnificent Glorification of Lucifer, but for some unknown reason, this album has a kind of mediocre score on Metal Archives, and everyone says this is like the weakest album. I never understood why. This is maybe my second favorite from them. It is damn good. It's extremely memorable. In fact, sometimes I think it's even better than Invoking the Majestic Throne. It is classic after classic after classic. It starts kind of the same way with 2 blistering songs, but even more so blistering, even less doomy sections. We have Baptized in Black Goat Blood and Crush the Jewish Prophet. Crush the Jewish Prophet being incredibly memorable, and they play it all the time. Then in the middle of the album, we get some more mid-paced and slow-tempoed songs that are incredibly memorable, even more catchy, and even easier to get into than the slow moments on the last 2 albums of Blood and Darkness, We Are Born, and Dark Mutilation Rites are both incredibly catchy and very memorable. It almost sounds like black and roll without the gay satiric kind of way of doing it. The title track is unbelievably catchy. It's so weird that a band was actually able to do almost like a black and roll style without it being absolutely horrific. In fact, being one of the best damn songs they've ever written. The only problem this album faces is that it's not as diverse as, say, Invoking the Majestic Throne, but it's just as good in my opinion. People really need to go back and listen to this one. It is fantastic. Now, Nefarious, Dismal, God damn it, these titles are crazy. Nefarious, Dismal, Orations is another classic from them. And even though I don't like it as much as the last 2 albums, it's still in that same vein. I still consider this to be part of the badass middle era of the band, with the black album cover starting with Invoking the Majestic Throne all the way to Nefarious. This is like the end of that trilogy. What it has above the other 2 is the production. This is maybe their best production ever, because it takes the style of the last 2, especially the sound of Invoking the Majestic Throne, because it had a pretty good sound, and it makes it sound ginormous. This is like their biggest, most badass sounding album. But the big problem is that some of the songs aren't as memorable. You have some more filler on here, kind of in the middle. But there are fantastic standouts. The way it starts with Ancient Monumental War Hymn just knocks you off your feet right away. You're like, ooh, this is one of their best openings. Then, of course, you have badass classics kind of towards the middle end of the album, where you have the epic Where Darkness is Lord and Death the Beginning. Oh, what a fantastic epic all the way through. Maybe even better than the epic off the last album. We have another ridiculous title. Ominous Doctrines of the Perpetual Mystical Macrocosm. Most black metal fans I know say that this is like the best album they ever released. Of course, there's a lot of great blistering songs, mostly in the first parts of the album, and you do get a badass epic like Desolate Funeral Chant, which is really, really doomy and kick-ass. It is great, and I do get it when people say this is their favorite album, it's the best album, and I will not argue that. So don't you dare be a salty bitch and argue it with me, because these albums, as you know, are all just about as equally good. Now, Obscure Verses for the Multiverse not only has one of the most pronounceable, easy names to say, but it is actually one of the weirdest albums they've released. In fact, it's probably the biggest departure they've ever made since, the first album that they released, considering, they went from thrash to that crazy black metal style. But this one is very weird. The production is even weirder than the last one, and it sounds very, very melodic. So that is very cool that they're changing it up, and it's actually very much a noticeable change. But it is actually my least favorite of the black metal albums, which a lot of people are going to be like, what the fuck? Because a lot of people really, really love this one, and I do too. However, it holds the only song that I dislike from Inquisition. The only song, and I can't stand the damn thing, because the melodic style is good and all, and they are able to incorporate it, especially in this album, but they really went overboard on one song and it became absolutely torturously cheesy. We're talking about Inversion of the Ethereal White Stars. The first two songs are blistering, then you get some more mid-paced, slow-tempoed shit that's really catchy and easy to get into, but just doesn't feel as badass as the last couple albums. But the album also holds maybe my favorite song from them, because it's really hard to say what my favorite is because they're all so goddamn good, but this one has the most amazing epic riff to it. Arrival of Eons After is an absolute classic, but for some reason, a lot of people don't like to note these songs that are kind of in the middle of the album. And everyone talks about the early songs or the end songs. But this one is an absolute fantastic deep cut. And now we move on to their last album at the moment. This one, everyone agrees. Every Inquisition fan agrees that this is one of the best albums and the best album of 2016. It is a masterpiece. It is badass. They change it up a little bit while also going back to that real good classic feel. The frog vocals are kind of disappearing, and instead Dagon does a very, very, very easy to get into black metal style. It's kind of low in the mix, but he mixes it well with the music. It's one of their biggest sounding albums. It's one of their most epic albums. The songs are some of the most memorable they've ever written. Bloodshed across the Empyrean altar beyond the celestial zenith.
Dark force, spawning, cosmic, eagle, planet, ocean, mountain, altar.
I remember the first time I heard this album, I was binging their discography. I was thinking, the early stuff is probably the best, there's some great shit in there. Loving all their stuff. Then I put this one on. I think it was the last one I listened to. And, when you're kind of binging discography after a while, you're kind of getting desensitized to it, so you're kind of losing a little bit of interest. But then I put this one on. I was glued the entire time listening to it. I was like, Jesus Christ. The music on it is so unbelievably good. From the first song, From Chaos They Came, it's almost like you want to say they're back, but they never left. And then Wings of Anu is an absolute classic. It's so catchy, the Wings of Anu. You always just got to say that along with the song, 'cause it's just so repetitive, but so amazing.
Wings of Anu.
You have some badass slow numbers in the middle of the album. A Black Aeon shall cleanse, Aeon, however the fuck you say that, and Flames of Infinite Blackness Before Creation are really catchy. And of course, with this badass production, which might be their best production, that or Nefarious, it sounds more epic than it ever could have. And one of my favorite moments, which I usually hold as the weaker moments, of course, instrumentals, which Inquisition has a fair few of those, which I think are usually the weaker songs of the album. But this album does instrumental right. We have, of course, the title track, which is the instrumental, which I guess you could have had vocals on it. But I like my instrumentals to be long, epic, progressive with great riffs and great changes. Either that or a short instrumental that's memorable enough, but they nail it with this epic instrumental. The atmosphere on it is perfect, and it just slams you each time a new riff comes in. It's like, geez, probably my favorite song on the whole damn thing. So that's Inquisition. Still one of my favorite bands. Still will always be one of my favorite bands. Only one song I dislike, guys. Come on. Trust me. You gotta check this band out. Even if you don't like black metal, I don't give a fuck if you're just watching this because you're bored or you saw I, uploaded something. You accidentally subbed to me for that Iron Maiden video. Get off your lazy ass and listen to Inquisition.
Subscribe to the Downfall Network.